Hey guys, welcome to my channel. This is Ismail Dalvi and I'm gonna teach you technical general for the Dgca exam while also keeping airline in mind since airlines prefer asking a lot from technical general and you can expect at least around 60% of the paper from technical general for the airline. So a very important subject even if you're flying from abroad I'd suggest go through my videos since they are free and the most you guys could do is subscribe the channel and like my videos. So I'll give you a brief about what we are going to study for the technical general. So I'll have divided it in three parts. The first part is principles of flight. The second is engines. The third is systems and electricals. So I'm going to start with POF since that's the most important part. So I'll give you a brief about what principles of flight actually is. So for principles of flight, we're going to study the basic forces that act on an airplane and the physics behind and the aerodynamics behind an aircraft flying. So I hope you guys enjoy the series and we'll begin with the chapter with the intro for the principles of flight. So we have an aircraft in front of us. This is a typical Cessna, which I expect you guys are gonna fly once you start flying. So we're gonna discuss the four forces that acts on aircraft when it's flying straight and level. So the first force is gonna be the weight. The next force is gonna be lift. The third force is gonna be thrust, and the last force is gonna be drag. So I'll give you a brief about all these forces. So weight is the force that acts vertically downwards from the center of gravity. CG is short for center of gravity, and then we have lift, which acts perpendicular to the flight path. All right. So what is flight path? It is the path your aircraft is flying. So in this case, this is a flight path. So what is perpendicular? It is 90 degrees. So your lift is gonna be 90 degrees to it, and it acts through CP. What is CP? Center of pressure. It's the place where lift acts. So for weight, we have center of gravity. So for lift, we have center of pressure. And then we're gonna talk about thrust. So when you're flying, you want to move forward, right? So the force that helps you move forward is thrust, and the force that pulls you back is drag. This is a force that resisting your forward motion. And the fun fact is lift and drag they're proportional. So if we are producing lift, we are also gonna produce drag since drag is a byproduct of lift. So I hope the forces acting on aircraft was clear for you guys. So basically this is all the basics for technical general and we haven't actually started the syllabus for the Dgca exam. So now I'm gonna do the next thing which is airplane axes. So the first axis is gonna so we have three axes by the way. The first is longitudinal, the second is gonna be lateral, and the third is normal, which is also known as vertical axis. So we'll go ahead with the longitudinal axis. So the axis that runs from the of the aircraft to the tail of the aircraft is called the longitudinal axis, and the movement about this axis. So the keyword here is about is called roll. So I'll show you a picture to help you visualize what a roll actually is. Okay, so the first picture you see over here, this is rolling, where the left wing is low and the right wing is above. So the so if you see the longitudinal axis, it's quite constant, it's not moving. The aircraft is fixated along it and the aircraft is rolling. So the next axis is gonna be the lateral axis. So the one you see over here, that's passing from the wing tip to the wing tip. This is the lateral axis, and again the moment about this axis is gonna be pitch. So what pitch is? So about the lateral axis, you climb, you descend, and I'll show you. So can you see this pitching? The aircraft here is climbing. All right. So if you see the axis that passes to the wing tip to the wing tip, right? So here the wings, that line is constant, and the aircraft is moving along it, about it. Correction about. The keyword here is about. So I hope you are able to visualize this. And now we are gonna do the third axis, which is the normal axis. So all right, I wanna ask you if you can visualize this line being constant, and what type of movement is possible if I keep this line constant. Take some time. I know if you're new to this, if this is the first thing you're studying, it's gonna be quite hard, but it's fine. So all right, I'll tell you what the movement is called. That's called yawing. Basically yaw is your nose moves left, your nose moves right. Your wings are level. Okay, your wings are gonna be level over here, and just the nose moves left and right with the help of your rudder. All right. So these were the three forces that act on an aircraft. So there's one more thing I want to teach you, which is kind of important. It's the type of pressures. So we have two important type of pressures. One is the static pressure, and next is dynamic pressure. So this is the pressure exerted by still air, and this is the pressure exerted by moving air. So I'll explain it to you. So let's say I'll take it to the next page. Okay, let's say this is the land. Okay, this is the land area, and as we climb, what we know, right, the air gets thinner. So let's say there were 10 molecules of air at the ground. As you keep climbing, so I did not count, the number of molecules are gonna keep reducing, right? All right. So by the time so what is static pressure? So basically, if you look at this, the force this these molecules are experiencing are from all the molecules above. So it's like, imagine there are 10 books. All right, this is one book, two book, three book, four book. So the most pressure you're gonna feel is on the book that's at the bottom, right? Because it has all these books above it, and as as you keep going up, it reduces because the number of books reduce. So there's the same scenario over here. As you keep going, the number of molecules keep reducing, hence the pressure reduces. And this is a type of pressure we call static pressure. So there's no movement of air over here, right? So when I look at the next pressure, which is dynamic pressure. So as I told you, dynamic pressure is exerted by moving air. Alright. So there's something that you need to keep in mind, that air has mass. Alright. So where air is gonna flow, it's gonna possess kinetic energy. Right? This is, I hope you know what kinetic energy is. It's the energy when an aircraft is in motion, and again the formula for is half rho v square. So mv square, sorry. So over here, your air, it's gonna have some mass, and then again it's gonna have some velocity. Then again, if you multiply all this, you're gonna get the kinetic energy, which nothing but is dynamic pressure. All right, so now we studied both the pressures. There is a quick formula that I want you to remember, that total pressure is equals to static plus dynamic. All right, this is just a quick formula that I want you to remember. So now we're going to look at quick laws, and the first one is going to be the universal law. So what does universal law state? Mass can neither be created nor be destroyed. Pretty easy and nothing to explain over here. And then we have the next law, which is principle of continuity. So what does principle of continuity exactly state? So when we assume that, wait, I'll just draw it for you. Let's assume that this is a pipe, all right? It broadens over here, it, it's slim over here. So if there's anything flowing through here, the mass flow is going to be constant. Do you get what I'm saying? So what is mass flow? Mass flow is basically the area, this area, times the velocity times the density, all right? So let's assume I have air flowing through it, all right? Air is flowing over here. So if you see, when air is flowing from here to here, the area is, so this entire multiplication remains constant, all right? This is what principle of continuity states. So if you see, the area here is smaller, right? So area here is reducing. This is reducing. But as we said, this has to be constant. So something over here has to increase, right? We can't increase density because density, it changes with altitude. You're not changing the height over here. So what happens is your velocity increases to balance this out, and hence this entire equation is once again constant. So if you look over here, this area is increasing, right? This is increasing. So again, if you look over here, area into velocity into density, this has to be constant. But the area is increasing, so something has to reduce to make this constant. So it's gonna be a velocity. Your velocity reduces, and then again your entire equation is constant, right? Makes sense? So this is how the mass flow is remaining constant throughout a tube. So we take tube as an example. This is an imaginary tube to help you understand, because we're going to use this to understand how lift acts on an aircraft. All right, now we have the third law, which is the Bernoulli's theorem. Again, this is an important theorem. So what does Bernoulli's theorem state? It states that static pressure, all right, I'm going to show you that, plus the dynamic pressure. This is constant, all right. So what is static pressure? It is the still air. And what is dynamic pressure? This is the moving air, all right. The sum of this remains constant. As I showed you over here, if one is decreasing, the other has to increase to keep the equation constant. So this is gonna make more sense once I teach you the other stuff. So the other concept that we're gonna study is streamlines and stream tubes. So I wanna give you an example. So let's say this is an aircraft over here. We are looking at from the top. Don't mind my drawing, sorry. So this is an aircraft. This is your wing. If I cut it from here, all right, and if I look it from the sideways, what am I gonna see? This is a shape I'm gonna see. And what do we call this shape? An aerofoil. I'm sorry, aerofoil. Alright, so this is basically me cutting the wing and then showing it to you from the side, and this is called aerofoil. So what are we gonna assume? That I've put it in a pipe kind of structure. Alright, so we are assuming that this is in a pipe. Alright, so what's happening over here is, let's assume air is flowing. Alright, so do you remember when I told you that when the area reduces, what happens? So this is area into velocity into density equals to constant, right? If you see over here, this was how much area the air was covering. But you look over here, the area is again reduced. So what happens to velocity? It has to increase, right? This increases to keep your equation constant. Alright. If velocity increases, what happens? Which type of energy is actually increasing? It's your kinetic energy, right? Kinetic energy increases. And then in return, which energy is related to kinetic energy? I mean, which pressure? Sorry. And that is dynamic pressure, right? I told you about it. So dynamic pressure increases. And if we go back and look at this theorem, Bernoulli's theorem, which is static pressure plus dynamic pressure is constant. Alright. So if static pressure plus dynamic pressure is constant, and again, if your dynamic pressure is increasing, what should happen to static pressure to keep it constant? Yeah, you guys are right. It has to decrease. If you decrease this, your dynamic pressure is going to increase, right? I mean, if this has increased, this has to decrease to keep it constant. So what happens if you're so lift again? This is something interesting, which I mean, it comes in your next chapters, but I'm going to tell it to you now. So it's kind of interesting to you guys. So again, your lift is dependent on static pressure. All right. So if this is reducing, there's low pressure over here, right? Low pressure. I'm gonna write low pressure. I'm sorry, it's gonna be very small, but okay. This is low pressure. And comparatively, I'm not saying actually, but comparatively, when you compare this pressure to this is high pressure, right? Below the wing. Then again, law of equilibrium. Whenever there is any imbalance, it travels from high to low. Alright? So this is traveling from high to low, correct? And then again, if this is a wing and there's a force that's going high to low, what type of force is that? That's lift, right? Vertically upward. That's what we studied in the first half of the video. Lift. This is how lift is generated. I hope I tried to make it more understanding for you guys. So yeah, so back to our topic, the main topic which we forgot was streamline. So basically, this lines of air you see, we call them streamlines. So what do you see that they are converging over here? So see, this is converging and this is diverging. So this is converging over here. And what converging means is that your velocity is increasing, and what diverging means is your velocity is decreasing. And when velocity increases, what happens to pressure? It reduces. And I'm talking about static pressure already. And what happens to pressure when velocity decreases? Your pressure increases. I hope that makes sense. And again, we're talking about static pressure only. Alright, I mean, this was all the basics, and now we're gonna study the first important part for technical general. Alright, so this is gonna be the first important chapter for you guys. We have covered the basics, and now the first chapter is gonna be subsonic flow. So, do you remember I drew the aerofoil for you guys by cutting the wing? So, I'm gonna draw it again. Alright, this is an aerofoil. So, what is an aerofoil basically? I've cut the wing over here, right? Okay, and I've gotten this shape. So, it's a shape that's capable of producing lift with high efficiency. So, what do I mean when I say high efficiency? Do you remember I told you that lift and drag are correlated? That whenever I'm producing lift, I'm also going to produce drag. And of course, if I'm producing lift, I don't want to produce so much drag that it does not make sense to fly an aircraft, right? So, high efficiency means that I'm producing drag and I'm producing lift, but not that much that it's affecting my performance of the aircraft. All right. So, this is what I mean by high efficiency. So now we're going to study the different parts of your aerofoil. All right, all right. So if this is the leading edge of the aerofoil, okay, the front part of the aerofoil is called the leading edge, and this the behind part is called the trailing edge. It's quite easy to remember this leading. What does leading suggest? The front part, and then it's the opposite is going to be trailing edge. So if I draw a straight line, okay, the keyword here is straight line from leading edge to the trailing edge, straight. Wait, I'm gonna make it better for you down here. Oh, sorry. I mean drawing. I'm sure you guys understand drawing is not my cup of tea. All right. So if I draw a straight line from here to here, all right, from the leading edge to the trailing edge, the straight line is called a chord line, right? It's nothing. It's just a straight line that joins the leading edge and the trailing edge. And now if I add some spikes to it, and if I make a line that cuts this aerofoil exactly into equal halves, all right, exactly this part and this part is going to be equal. What do I call this line? This dotted line is going to be my camber line. This is my camber line, the line that divides the aerofoil into equal parts, all right. And do you see that this difference between them, all right, this difference between them, all right. And what do I call this difference between them is camber, just camber, all right. So this is camber line, equal distance. A straight line is chord line, and the distance between them is called camber, simply camber. And all right, there's something I wanted you guys to remember. If your camber line is above your chord line, it's called positive camber. If let's say the camber were to be below, camber line to be below the chord line, it would have been called negative camber. And if it was equal, like if the chord line and camber line were the same line, we would have called it symmetrical aerofoil. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Now I want to discuss another thing with you guys, which is relative airflow. Relative airflow. I'm gonna write short form over here. So let's assume this is aerofoil, and we imagined having. Okay, let's not imagine having a stream tube over here. Let's just imagine there's air flowing. All right, and air which is not affected by the aircraft being over there, by the aircraft moving. Nothing is affecting it basically. The type of air, this type of air is called relative airflow, which is not affected by the presence of aircraft. Oh, what the hell is this? By the presence. I'm sorry, my handwriting is quite shitty. AC, short for aircraft, and the pressure is not going to be affected by the presence of aircraft. The temperature is not going to be affected. Also, the velocity is not going to be affected by the presence of aircraft, and the direction is going to be exactly opposite to the flight path. So let's say if this is my aircraft and it's moving straight, all right, I'm going to assume that the relative airflow is exactly opposite to it, no change. There's literally no change because of the aircraft, no change in velocity, temperature, or pressure. All right, and the magnitude is gonna be the true air speed. This is something important which is gonna help you. And let's see that there's an airflow that gets affected by the presence of aircraft, and it has a different temperature, velocity, or pressure. That type of airflow is called effective airflow. Just and it is affected by the presence of aircraft. Make sense? Alright, now we're gonna talk about angle of attack. So what exactly is angle of attack? It's the angle between the chord line. Alright. So this was the chord line. Do you remember? This is the chord line, and this is the relative airflow. So the angle between the chord line and the relative airflow, this is the angle of attack, or also denoted by alpha. All right, makes sense. And again, if I say that there's airflow, the actual airflow is the effective airflow, right? Because of course air is going to be affected by the presence of aircraft. The angle between the effective airflow and the chord line is going to be effective angle of attack. And there's one more thing I want you to know is angle of incidence. Angle of incidence. So what basically is angle of incidence is the angle between the chord line. This is the chord line, right? And the longitudinal axis. Do you remember? I told you. I told you about all the three axes. This is the aircraft, and this is the longitudinal axis, and then you're gonna have the chord line somewhat here. This angle is gonna be the angle of incidence, which makes sense is gonna be fixed throughout flight because you don't expect your longitudinal axis to shift, of course. All right. So let's go back here. Let's go back to the aerofoil. All right. This looks like a good aerofoil. I'm gonna use it again. I don't trust myself with drawing. All right. So this is my aerofoil. All right. So the thing is, when air is coming, all right, it's going up, right, and starts going down. And I said this is low pressure over here, and there's high pressure over here. That's why you have lift in the first place, right? And what if I told you that there's some air that's coming here and stopping, the velocity is completely zero? So what happens when your velocity is zero? Your pressure equals to highest, right? And which type of pressure is highest? Your static pressure. So this point is called stagnation point, where your velocity is zero, the pressure is highest, alright, and keep in mind your static pressure is gonna be the one that's highest, not dynamic pressure, alright, because dynamic pressure is the pressure by moving the pressure exerted by moving air, alright. So the thing is when air is flowing, it has some energy because so this is the skin of the aircraft, alright, the one I'm highlighting over here. I'm gonna use a different color. Alright, this is the skin of the aircraft. So when your air is flowing over it, of course it's gonna lose some energy, right? Makes sense? It's gonna lose some energy and it's gonna start separating from the aerofoil and it becomes turbulent flow. So this flow is called the laminar flow, which has thinner boundary and has less drag, less. You can see it has less drag and it has a tendency to separate because it has low kinetic energy, right? Makes sense. And then you have the turbulent airflow here that has separated from the aerofoil because it lost all its energy since this was already low, right? And then again you have drag created because of the aircraft skin and it got separated. Alright, so the point where it separates, this point is called the transition point, where your airflow changes from laminar flow to turbulent flow. So this turbulent flow has thicker is a thicker layer, all right, and it gives more skin friction drag, so your drag is more, and since it's a thick layer, it also has high kinetic energy, and it doesn't tend to separate quickly, so it's gonna stay like this. That's what um that's what that's how it acts. So now let's look at the next part which we're gonna study. All right. So when air is flowing, all right, it's traveling some distance upwards, right? So when the air is flowing upwards on an aerofoil, it's simply called upwash. And once again, all right, it's moving back to its original state, right? This is called downwash. When the air is moving back to its original state, it's downwash. And okay, now I'm going to teach you something interesting. Adverse adverse pressure gradient. Alright, what did I tell you? That always this is low pressure, this is high pressure. There's going to be a force from high to low, which is the nature's law. But do you see here this downwash area? So as I told you, this low pressure, this is high pressure. But here the air is moving from low pressure to high pressure. This is what we call adverse pressure gradient. When air is moving from low pressure to high pressure, this is called adverse pressure gradient. And then there's something else. This then you have boundary layer. Boundary layer basically it's a very thin layer. This is very thin layer, very close to the wing, which has very is very actually very close, and the velocity is quite less due to, of course, the skin friction drag. Wait, if there's a way to stop it. Okay, no. So very close, velocity is less because of skin friction drag. So what is skin friction drag? Basically, it's the drag because of the aircraft's skin. So of course, the skin is gonna have some irregularities because of the paint and all, and it's gonna give you some drag, and that drag is called skin friction drag. All right. So as we discuss that the pressure, let me draw an aerofoil once again. All right. This is an aerofoil. Okay, I'm getting quite good at. So because of the flow of the air, we have high pressure here, low pressure here, comparatively high. Okay, this is not actually very high, but when you compare it to this pressure over here, it's higher. So there's a lift force acting. Alright, so the point where lift is acting is called CP, center of pressure. Do you remember? Does it does it hit any bells which I taught you before? CP. It's a point on the wing where your lift acts. Remember I told you? Yeah, that's CP. So the thing about CP is as you keep increasing your angle of attack, okay? Okay, let me draw an arrow string tube over here. So this is, let's say this is the normal angle of attack, and if I increase the angle of wait, if if I keep increasing the angle of attack, do you see what's happening? The area gets smaller and smaller. And again, as per the equation, if the area is getting smaller, the has to increase. If the velocity increases, what happens to my pressure? It reduces. Alright, low and high. So if this is reducing more and this is more, so what's happening? Your amount of lift is increasing when I am increasing the angle of attack. So and also what happens to center of pressure is it moves forward as I keep increasing my angle of attack. So of course you can't create infinite amount of lift. That's not possible. So there's gonna be a point where the CP is at the most forward location, and you can't increase your angle of attack anymore and create more lift. If you do, you're gonna stall. What is stall? It's loss of lift. Because what's happening is when you're increasing your angle of attack, you remember what I told you about this laminar flow and turbulent airflow. As you keep increasing your angle of attack, this keeps moving forward. Alright, since your CP is moving forward, your transition point, this transition point you see over here, it's also gonna move forward. So essentially, what's gonna happen is this is your aerofoil, and at a point, this is your transition point, and there's so much turbulent airflow that your aerofoil that's supposed to be highly efficient, no more efficient. You're gonna lose lift, alright? And as you lose lift, your CP, it's suddenly gonna move rearwards, and that is an indication that your aircraft has stalled. So yeah, that's basically it. And let me explain the next topic to you, which is gonna be all right. So the type of aerofoil we actually use is asymmetrical aerofoil, and more likely it is called positive camber aerofoil. Remember what is positive camber? When the camber line is above the chord line, it's called positive camber. So the thing about positive camber asymmetric airfoil is when your angle of, let's say I'm going to discuss different angle of attacks. This is minus 4 degrees angle of attack equals to 0 minus 4 to 0 degrees angle of attack equals to 4 degrees angle of attack equals to 16 degrees. Let's see. Alright, so let's assume this is minus 4. So the thing with you know right, what is angle of attack? Angle between chord line and relative airflow. Alright, so I'm not gonna draw it again and again. Let's assume this is minus 4. So the thing about asymmetrical is you don't get 0 left at 0 degrees. This is not true. You get 0 degrees at minus 4 degrees. Alright, so what am I trying to say? That if you're creating 0 left at minus 4, so anything above minus 4 degrees is gonna be positive left, right? So minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, even 0. Okay, you're gonna create some type of lift, some positive lift. So if my angle of attack is from minus 4 to 0 degrees, I'm creating some sort of lift, right, which is helping me create lift and fly the aircraft. And what is angle of, sorry, this is gonna be 16. What is angle of attack when it's 4 degrees? This is called the most efficient angle of attack. Do you remember I told you that drag is a byproduct of lift? Alright, this is a byproduct of lift. So there's a ratio, lift by drag. Of course, you don't want drag to so much, but you want lift so much, right? You want more lift and less drag. So this L by D ratio is a ratio of lift by drag, and the more it is, the better it is for your aircraft. Alright, so it is said that that plus 4 degrees typically is the highest L by D ratio angle. That means if my aircraft is at plus 4 degree angle of attack, my L by D is gonna be highest, which means my lift is gonna be highest with very minimal drag. Alright, and angle of attack 16 degree is the maximum angle of attack that I can fly with. If I increase my angle of attack anymore, my aircraft is gonna stall, and what's gonna happen? My CP is gonna move aft, right? My CP is gonna move aft. I'm gonna lose lift, and since my CP is gonna move aft, my aircraft is gonna pitch down. Alright. Of course, you have lost all your lift. Now you're not gonna fly. You're not gonna even maintain straight and level. It's just gonna go nose down at 16. At if you increase your angle of attack any more than 16 degrees. So I'm gonna summarize it for you. what happens at different angles of attack. This is going to be summary. So when you increase your angle of attack, your CP moves forward, but this is only till 16-degree angle of attack, because after that your CP moves aft. So aft is basically rearward. It's gonna move suddenly rearward because since your wing is not able to produce any sort of lift, it's gonna move backward and you're gonna pitch down. So the transition point, I hope you remember what transition point is. It moves forward. Alright. This alright. There's one more thing I forgot to tell you. So this is lamina. This is turbulent. This is transition point. And do you see? There's gonna be a point. This point where the turbulent flow is leaving the aerofoil and is escaping the aerofoil. So this point is called separation point. Alright. So when I'm increasing my angle of attack, even the separation point is gonna move forward. And then do you remember stagnation point? If I keep increasing my angle of attack, what happens to my stagnation point? If it's here over here, it's gonna keep moving aft, down and aft. I hope you remember what stagnation point is. The velocity equals to zero and you have the highest pressure. I explained how that happens. So we are gonna look at the second last topic for the day, which is aerodynamics center. Alright, so as we saw, there's a point CP which moves forward and aft depending on your angle of attack, right? So what if I tell you there's a point on the chord line? It's a fixed point, okay? It does not move anywhere. This is your chord line. This is fixed point, which is about 25% of your chord. So remember this, okay? 25% of your chord, fixed point, called the aerodynamic center, okay? And why is it so special? Because along the aerodynamic center, the changes in magnitude of lift remain constant. Alright, I'm gonna explain this to you with an example. Alright, let's say this is my angle of attack here is 1 degree. Alright, my CP is over here and I'm generating around 50 newtons of force, and my distance between AC and CP, let's say it's 4. Alright, so can you calculate movement? This is 4 meter movement. What is movement? Force into distance, right? So what is the force over here? It's 50 newtons into 4 meters. How much is that? That gives me 200, right? This is my moment. Now let's see again. This is my airfoil, but at this now my angle of attack is let's say 4 degrees, all right. And as we discussed, AC fixed point, 25% chord, fixed point AC. And okay, what happens to CP when you increase the angle of attack? It moves forward, okay. So this is your CP. And also when you increase your angle of attack, what happens to your lift? It increases, right? So even though your distance has decreased, let's say it has become 2 meters, your lift has increased, right? Now this has become 100. So again, movement is force into distance. How much is your force? 100 newtons into distance 2 equals to 200. Right? Do you see? These two values are equal. So, uh, around your aerodynamic center, your changes in the magnitude of lift remains constant. And there's one more point I want you to remember that a nose down pitching movement exists about the aerodynamic center. And why is this? Because CG is usually ahead of CP. Alright, let's say this is an aerofoil. Alright, if my CG is ahead of my CP, this is my CG and this is my CP. What does CG do? Vertically downward, CP vertically upward. Do you see this kind of creates a nose down pitching movement? Yeah, the this is this is what the statement says. Alright, so the last topic for this chapter is gonna be about symmetrical aerofoil. Let's go. Oh, sorry, what it's. I'm sorry for this. I'll just go ahead and delete it. Oh, shit. Oh, you know what? Let's just ignore this. Alright. Symmetrical aerofoil. Alright. So there are a few things I want you to keep in mind when you talk about symmetrical aerofoil, and that is so for a normal aerofoil, what happens is when you increase your angle of attack, the CP keeps moving forward. So let's say this is 0 degrees, my CP is here. This is 2 degrees, my CP is here. This is 3 degrees, my CP is here. So your CP is moving, right? But what happens with symmetrical aerofoil is your CP remains constant. It does not move. Even if you increase your angle of attack, your CP does not move. Thus, the pitching moment. So this is an important line that I want you to remember. Pitching moment along AC at normal angle of attack is gonna be zero. Alright. For asymmetrical it was nose down, but for symmetrical it's gonna be zero. And yeah, that's the end of the first chapter. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you guys have any doubt, please feel free to comment or ask me on my Instagram. I'd be very happy to reply. I'm sorry, this is my first video, and if you are facing any issue with the audio, please feel free to text me. I'll clear your doubts. I mean, this is my first time recording a video. I hope I did a good job for you guys. And yeah, you guys can expect a new video pretty soon for the first chapter. It is gonna be lift. Quite an interesting chapter. Alright, let's see you for the next one.